Thank you, Anthony.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Fernando, anytime.
What's the difference of Anthony and Jerry Lewis?
Oh, the difference between us? Well, you know that we are not from the same generation. He is my biological dad, but professionally, as a matter of fact, I chose to walk a different path. I began my career as an engineer in electronics, and I have a credential in electronics as a certified electronic technician. And that is how I dovetailed into the world of filmmaking and videotape eventually. My father was my mentor, of course. I learned to edit film when I was 10 years old. I was editing 35 millimeter film in his edit room at the Bel Air house where I grew up.
Até que ponto o sobrenome Lewis ajuda e até que ponto dificulta a tua vida?
That's a very interesting question, and it's taken me until this point where I'm in my 50s to really understand that that fact can be a wonderful blessing. It can also be a curse. It all depends on what you do with it, how you use it. In my profession, it doesn't necessarily do much for me because, as you well know, as a filmmaker yourself, if you don't have the innate talent already, you're not going to be successful. Whether your father is Jerry Lewis or the Pope, it doesn't make any difference. If you don't know what you're doing, you will not get work. Now, I have worked very hard in my lifetime, and I had a very good teacher. I had several very good teachers, and in a capsule, I'm very proud of my father. I'm very proud of my family name. However, I am a self-made filmmaker and engineer and pilot and several other things I do.
Do que você gosta mais, da aviação ou dessa indústria cinematográfica?
Well, you really can't compare them because they're two very different things. Aviation is, I'm not going to call it a hobby. It's way more than a hobby because I was studying to become a commercial airline pilot. I went through several ratings, my single engine, multi-engine, single engine, and multi-engine instrument rating. And then I started a family and my focus changed. I was always a filmmaker, always a photographer, and that will always be the heart and soul of everything I do in life. That is my vocation, that is my calling. And it will always be the most important of everything I do.
Você é especialista em luz, é especialista em fotografia. Dentro dessas duas áreas, qual é que você mais gosta? Ou elas estão juntas?
Well, everything is connected in filmmaking. As a matter of fact, I think I defer to cameras more than anything else. I have always been an operator of cameras, whether it's 35 millimeter film, still film, or 35 millimeter motion picture cameras, and then that evolved into videotape. And I grew up in the entire world of videotape from the very first minute that it hit the market. So yes, I'm sorry I lost my train of thought, but I think I answered the question. I think you can dovetail that.
Eu sei que essas áreas estão conectadas. Você se considera profissional multifunção?
Oh, absolutely. I have been fortunate enough to have worked with several wonderful mentors, some of the finest directors of photography in the film business in Hollywood, and my father as a personal mentor, and several other people that I've done productions with. But I am a true multitasker. If something breaks on the set, for instance, I can fix it. Most of the lights I use, I have built myself from scratch. Some people call me a mad scientist. I'm not very mad, I'm just a scientist. but it is all connected. It really and truly is all connected. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to go on set and know how to do every single job of everybody who's on that stage.
Como que você vê a convergência hoje das ferramentas de comunicação? Você viveu um momento maravilhoso da indústria cinematográfica, acompanhou, viveu isso na tua infância e hoje nós vemos um mercado totalmente diferente. Queria que você analisasse um pouquinho essa diferença e como que você está conseguindo acompanhar isso tudo.
This is a very good question. Everyone in my generation who has chosen to stay in filmmaking as their primary profession has had to reinvent themselves almost from scratch, because you can practically make a documentary film with an iPhone. Now, 35 years ago, someone would have thought you were really certifiably insane to say that. But of course we've had to reinvent ourselves. But the big difference is that the fundamental, the core fundamentals of filmmaking, as it applies also to videotape and high definition, have never changed, and they never will change. And unless you have those innate skills and talents, you will not be a filmmaker. So all we've really had to do, those of us in my generation, is learn the newer equipment, learn how it works, and everything else from 40 years ago is the same.
Você acredita que a comunicação, enfim, em forma de arte, ela tem um poder transformador? Por exemplo, hoje todo mundo, como nós conversamos, grava alguma coisa. Né? De que maneira isso pesa, por exemplo, você vendo alguém fazendo de uma maneira muito amadora, mas ela passa aquela informação e faz chegar até a outra pessoa? As pessoas fazem essa diferença?
I believe the audience will always notice the difference, but the interesting change in the paradigm or the archetype of film is such that people really don't care anymore, I find. Whether you shoot something on an iPhone or you shoot it on a Panavision high-definition camera that costs $150,000. The audience has become very tolerant of much lower quality than there was before. In the days of, say, the great Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer films, in 3-strip Technicolor, it was unheard of to have anything less than shooting that with a Mitchell BNCR or an Aeroflex or Panavision. But today it's acceptable because content is spread across thousands of channels all over the world. So there has been an increased tolerance in lower quality. Personally, I don't like it. I'll never like it. I'm old school. But to answer your question, yes, we, as a society, we have begun to really accept the lower quality production and watch it and sometimes even enjoy it.
Você me desculpa te cutucar, mas isso faz parte do repórter e do jornalista te colocar na parede um pouquinho sobre isso. Nós temos hoje uma transformação da mídia avassaladora, que é o nosso tema da conversa. E hoje nós temos atores eletrônicos, puramente eletrônicos. A nossa profissão vai acabar?
I have very strong beliefs on that subject, very strong feelings. I am not fond of the fact that many films that we see today, I would say 80 to 90% of them are done on green screens. And all the blanks are filled in by computers. Well, I think that takes most of the fun out of filmmaking. Now, yes, of course, it means you bring in big box office. You have big name actors, you know, you've got all the money behind it to distribute it with a major studio. The end justifies the means. It's very Machiavellian that way, but artistically, to me, it's a travesty. It's terrible. I don't like it. How much fun is it on a green screen. Think about John Wayne and Kirk Douglas and people like that. Burt Lancaster making westerns out in the beautiful parts of Arizona and Utah and California. I mean, you don't have to do that anymore. You go into a stage on a green screen, and that's that. But personally, I don't like it. But there again, it's show business. It's a business. It's not show art. It's show business.
O que o senhor falaria, Anthony, para os executivos dessa indústria?
I would say that they're doing a very, very good job at making money. But I don't think that they're necessarily making the best decisions as far as where to apply that money and how to apply that money, because bit by bit, I believe the industry is eroding. It's turning into a very stoic formula type of it's a very mechanical process. Much of the artistic process is gone. Much of the necessity for actors to be really good actors is gone. And as I said, filmmaking from my generation's perspective is almost extinct. And it's something that I don't like. And, well, what do you say to an executive at Disney or Warner's or Metro who's making $200 million in a weekend at the box office? Success! They did it. What can you say about that? The art form is gone, but they're making the money, so I guess I can't complain about that.
Você acredita que tudo vale pelo dinheiro?
Oh, I don't believe in that at all. I think for many it does, but in a perfect world, I would like to see the industry doing much of what it did when I was coming up in the business, when I was watching my father making films at Paramount in the 1960s, when people like Adolf Zukor, the founder of Paramount Studios, and Y. Frank Freeman and Barney Balaban were running that studio, and I would like to see that. I would like to see more of that, but I'm a pragmatist. I know it's not coming back. So I look at it with a grain of salt and quite a bit of nostalgia, because I remember it, I love it, I will always love it, but I know that it's gone.
Anthony, você concorda comigo que estamos vivendo num deserto de novos talentos? Não haverá mais a geração de Jerry Lewis e todos esses que você citou. Você compartilha dessa ideia?
In a lot of ways, yes. We still have quite a bit of talent out there, but not nearly as many. Not nearly as many, because think about it. What is the incentive? Why would there have to be a Burt Lancaster?
Mas na época do seu pai não tinha incentivo.
Talent. Pure talent. When a Yul Brynner or a Burt Lancaster or Spencer Tracy walked onto a soundstage, they were there and they were respected as major stars because they had true talent, and it was all about how talented you were. Was Rock Hudson more talented than
Então
perhaps...
o talento não é incentivo, mas o talento nasce por si só. Não precisa de incentivo quando se tem talento.
I think there are wonderfully talented people in the newer generation, and there always will be. There just aren't as many, and it's very hard for me. It's difficult to explain how I feel, because I suppose you had to live it to really understand. There were so many incredibly talented actors and directors and directors of photography and so forth across the board on the entire roster of a film, but it's just not necessary anymore. We'll always have our major players like Morgan Freeman and Harrison Ford and people such as that, and Mark Wahlberg is one of my favorite younger actors. Wonderfully talented people, Daniel Craig, James Bond, but you just won't have nearly as many anymore because it's not really necessary. Because when you're doing everything on a green screen, what do you really have to do except hit marks and deliver lines and look cool most of the time? I mean, of course that isn't what acting is all about, but in many cases it is.
O incentivo seria a oportunidade.
Oh, absolutely. It always will be, because if you don't maintain a certain level of performance, you won't have the opportunity anymore. So of course you have to work hard at it, and the people who are successful at it, they work very, very hard. All I'm saying is there are so many fewer of those very talented people than there were 40 or 50 years ago.
Vamos falar de Brasil. Como que você vê o Brasil em termos de potencialidade cinematográfica?
In my culture, we call it a sleeper. Brazil is a sleeper. Brazil has a tremendous amount of cinematic talent that is yet to be discovered by the world. As an example, my father had the great privilege of working with one of your finest comedians, Leandro Hassum, in a film that they shot right here in Las Vegas, and I had never seen him before, and I thought he was one of the funniest men I had ever seen.
O Hassum que teve a oportunidade de gravar com seu pai, não é? Ele que me perdoe.
Of course, that's what he said, and the two of them got along very well, and my dad was so impressed with him. He said his timing is beautiful. He's a true comic talent. He's a true talent. And there's a lot of that across the board. I found out when I fell in love with a very lovely Brazilian lady, my Patty Asher Lewis, and I began to make trips to and from Sao Paulo 5 times actually, and began looking around and seeing films and seeing live shows. Brazil has a lot of talent that impresses me a lot, I must say. And not just because we're talking here.
Yeah.
You have some marvelous talent there that the world deserves to benefit from and have more consensus with.
Did you record in Brazil?
No, I have not. I have not actually worked in Brazil as a filmmaker. I have worked in other Latin American countries, but not yet in Brazil. So sign me up, dear, will you? I'd like to do it.
Come on.
Yeah, you got it. I'd love to. I mean, I know Sao Paulo well enough now to get around and know where I am, and end up either on Paulista Street or Santa Efigenia.
You like Santa Efigenia?
Oh yeah, I love electronics. Really? Yeah, I mean, you got to make sure your wallet is still in your pocket, but yeah, I like it very much.
But it's very dangerous. É muito perigoso Santa Efigênia.
Yeah, that's what they tell me.
Pra gente encerrar, você se considera uma pessoa feliz?
Innately, yes, I do. The life that I've lived, the family I was born into, and being a child of Hollywood, a true child of Hollywood from the heyday, born in 1959, I've had a lot of difficult times. There's no substitute for that fact. It was a very difficult time for someone in my position. I didn't see my father very much. He was out there busy making 2 films a year for Hal Wallace and Paramount Pictures. But I think the benefit of seeing all the work that he did, all the great work he did, made up for it. And I never held it against him that I didn't see him a lot, because I knew he was doing great work, and we certainly lived a very nice life. But I am in a very good place right now. I'm married to one of the loveliest ladies on the earth, and I have a happy heart and a hopeful heart, and as long as it stays that way, I think everybody's going to be okay.
Muitas vezes a ausência do seu pai na tua criação, e isso acontece em outras famílias também, é culpa dele ou é culpa da profissão dele?
Oh, it was absolutely his profession. it wasn't his choice not to be around for his family. My two eldest brothers benefited from him being around a lot more when he was with Dean Martin. That was the early to mid 1950s. It was a different world then. When I was a young child, he was making at least 2 films a year for Paramount, sometimes working on 3 at the same time. So he was busy. He was just working, and I got that. I understood that. Now, I come from a family of 6 boys, and a couple of my brothers were not as forgiving as I or as understanding as I, but I knew that my dad was doing his best, and no human being is perfect. He was doing his best. He was doing some great work. He made a lot of people happy, and he did a lot of wonderful things for people with muscular dystrophy, so I can't say anything negative about that.
Se você existisse antes do seu pai fazer sucesso, qual o conselho que você daria ao seu pai?
I think I would probably tell him to make a greater effort to be a family man. I think he pretty much did everything very well. I can't say by the book, because whatever book was out there, he wasn't following it. He had his own book. But I think he could have done a better job being a family man, but I don't hold that against him. I would never hold that against him. He was busy, and I don't think any human being can possibly know what it's like to be that famous and that much in demand and keeping that kind of schedule. I can't. I'm once removed from that, and I still can't get my head around it. So my only advice to him would be just stay in the moment and focus and love those close to you as best you can.
Anthony, let's end. Let's finish. Are you okay?
I'm just fine.
Muito obrigado pela sua entrevista. Thank you very much for this interview.
It's my pleasure.
Your
Fernando.
Portuguese is very well.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. I had a great time.